here, this is clearly the very hardcore, the people who did not come to Paris for the, scenery and sights. We've managed to find the one unglamorous room in all of Paris. Here we are. And that's, in fact, there are people, young people, others all over Paris, in places like this and all over the world, today and every day, working hard on these things. Here's an interesting thing. We planned last weekend to have an enormous march in Paris. We thought it would be as big as the one in New York last September. And my colleagues, all of them young, had worked for 6 or 8 months. We moved over here to France. We had people from hundreds of different groups, everybody lined up. Well, of course, that went by the board. The beautiful thing that happened immediately was we sent out word all around the planet and said, look, we can't march in Paris, we need people marching everywhere else. There were 2,200 marches and things around the world last weekend, and they were astonishing to see. I delayed my trip over here a few days so I could stay back in the States and help sort of in the right time zone to coordinate as many of the kind of pictures and things coming in. They were amazing. Big marches, thousands of people in just the most unlikely places in Malawi, and, in Ghana, and huge turnout down under in the Antipodes, across Europe, of course, but also happily very big in Asia and many places that we've really been working hard, all of us, all the different groups, to kind of establish footholds, places like Nepal, places like India. In fact, there was a very moving picture of people in Chennai demonstrating, and in the 6 days since, Chennai has had the biggest rainfall ever measured in that part of the world. There's now hundreds of dead people there. The city's been cut off, a city of 8 million, basically cut off from the world, an island. The point I'm trying to make is that there's now this big movement out there, and what it's been engaged by are a series of fights. That's how people have become. The trouble with climate change always is that it seems so big and we seem so small against it. What could we do? What could matter? What could happen? And the trick of building this movement over the last 5 or 6 years has been to convince people that there's enough of us that when we concentrate our power on particular things, we can make a difference. So in the States, the key fight, oddly, has been this fight over this pipeline down out of the tar sands of Canada that somehow turned into an emblematic battle that rallied people as things hadn't before. And as a result, pleasantly for the moment, we've beaten that pipeline. More to the point, as the leader of the American Natural Gas Association said to his colleagues in a speech a few weeks ago, he said, we somehow have to stop the Keystoneization of the nuclear project now. Because every place people are fighting. There's people going to jail today in Boston fighting pipelines there, and just place after place, and all over the world. We think we've beaten plans for the biggest coal mine in the world in Australia. France here has banned fracking, which is, I think in many ways, a direct outgrowth of the work that Ramsey and so many others did in New York State to take this issue and make it absolutely central. A beautiful part of this, for me to watch, has been finally the easy collaboration from top to bottom of the environmental movement. Much of the polarization, the idea that there was a kind of big green Washington environmental movement separate from our grassroots ones, really shifted. NRDC has been at the core of that. Nobody worked harder on things like the Keystone Pipeline and more effectively with all kinds of people. It's beautiful to watch this happen, and it will need to continue to happen in a big way. We're coming out of Paris bent on a world that whose temperature will rise 3.5 degrees, even if everyone keeps all the promises in their INDCs. That is, in some theoretical way, better than the 5-degree temperature rise we were headed for previously. But as Mr. Balog will tell us, I think, there's really not that much practical difference between a world where the temperature goes up 3.5 degrees Celsius and a world where it goes up 5. We're fried either way, and there's not going to be ice, and we've got an immense amount of work to do. And the only way we're going to get it done is if we continue building these movements. The reason that Paris is coming out better than Copenhagen is because before Copenhagen, there was no climate movement. There was no one in the streets. Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton could wander back to the United States following the greatest diplomatic fiasco since Munich and paying no price whatsoever for their failure. So could every other leader around the world. That's no longer the case. They and everybody have to deliver something, even if not enough. The job now is to keep pushing. And I think that increasingly the pushing is going to come probably less at this point on governments and more on the fossil fuel industry behind them. I think we're reaching the point where we've gotten almost as much as we're going to get from the cashiers in the front of the store. And if we want a full refund on our problem, we're going to have to find the guy at the back of the store who really runs the show. I'm headed off in seconds to go off across Paris to this mock trial that we're doing of Exxon this afternoon. Naomi Klein is the other prosecuting attorney, and we've got a lot of great judges, including the actor Peter Sarsgaard, who I'm eager to see you play a judge. But the point, as you all know, is that in the last 6 or 8 weeks, this remarkable set of documents has begun to emerge, making it clear that Exxon knew everything there was to know about climate change 30 years ago. And for those of us who spend our entire adult lives engaged in this fight, like Jacob or John, or the unbelievably maddening idea that Exxon 25 years ago, when Jim Hansen gave his testimony in Congress, could simply have said, you know what, he's right, our scientists are saying the same thing. And had they done so, we would not have wasted the last quarter century in a faux, pretend, phony debate. We would have spent the last 25 years working on solutions, and we'd be much of the direction to where we need to go now. That makes me as angry as a good Methodist Sunday school teacher is likely to get. And, so we're going to prosecute as best we can today, and we're going to keep this fight moving. And it's one of these ways in which we build this movement, make it sharper, stronger, bigger, more engaged. And I think the final point I'll make is, don't worry about the young people coming up. They're fully engaged. We 350.org's nothing but young people, except for me, you know. All over the world, there are young people who are doing it. Our problem is, frankly, just getting old people engaged. If you look at the polling data and everything else all over the United States, and that's where the problem lies. That's who's not willing to be strong. So you guys are clearly, in the leadership already. You're providing the resources. You're doing. We probably need some of you to go to jail too in the next, 6 months or a year or whatever, because we're really at the point. This is the greatest crisis that human beings have ever faced. We know now, thanks to people like Mark, what the answers are. We know that it's possible to get there, but we are 1,000 miles away from having the necessary political will at this point to do it. The U.S. Senate apparently this week is going to may lift, if we can't stop them, the long-standing ban on crude oil exports, the biggest item on Exxon's wish list. The fact that Democrats in the Senate would vote to do this during the week that we're in Paris discussing all of this stuff and after revelations of Exxon's misdeed, gives you some sense of just how far from where we need to be we currently are. So the battle is seriously on, and thank you guys for being a big part of it. There's two things that are going on that are beautiful and powerful. One is that there's this huge movement. Activists finally are doing their job. We're building it. We can make that happen. The other is that the engineers are doing their job. In the years since Copenhagen, the price of a solar panel dropped 80%. That's opened up remarkable new vistas on spreadsheets the world over. And between those two things, we're pounding away at the overwhelming political power of the fossil fuel industry. And if we keep doing that, then we have a chance. Whether we have a chance, frankly, again, I mean, the thing that's always hard about this is we waited a very long time to get started, and it's not completely clear that even if we do everything right at this juncture, the losses are going to be enormous even if we do everything right at this juncture. We've raised the temperature of the Earth 1 degree, and that's caused way more havoc and trouble than we thought it ever would have. The thought that we're going to go to 2 or 3 degrees is hair curling. Celsius. It's hair curling. I mean, we're you know, the kind of thing that happened in Chennai this week that's just your vision of the future for a long time to come. But that doesn't detract from a minute from the fact that all of you have the most important job that humans have ever had, which is to figure out somehow how quickly to step into this breach and keep things from getting any worse than they have to get. The work we do over the next few years will be the difference between the next few centuries being difficult and then being impossible, okay? And that's as heavy a load as humans have ever carried.